do that. There we go.
All right, we're starting now. All right, so good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first presentation of the MBTI teach-in for today, February 11th. Here, kicking us off today, we have Dr. Jillian Morris, the founder of Sharks for Kids. Dr. Morris, if you're all set, you can go.
I'm actually not a doctor. I appreciate that, but yeah. So thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited. This is always an incredible event, and I'm really excited to be sharing a little bit of my work on International Day of Women and Girls in Science. So thank you so much for having me. Today, I'm just going to talk a little bit about how we're using science, sort of research tags, different equipment, and cameras for shark conservation. So science and collecting data is really, really important for management decisions, for laws to be put in place, and for conservation efforts. It's really at the core of what makes conservation work. You have that data, and then you have amazing people working with that and pushing for that to get different laws in place. And this isn't just in the ocean and for sharks, it's for animals in general. So I am a marine biologist, and I've spent most of my time working with sharks. I've been really lucky. I've traveled all over the world to study these animals, from tagging projects to filming and photographing them. And then I started an NGO called Sharks for Kids. So we teach students all over the world about why these animals are important, how to get involved. And we run field trips, take kids out, teach them in-person learning activities. So I spend a lot of time with these animals. And when I tell people I spend time with sharks, I get a couple of different reactions. Sometimes I get, wow, that sounds amazing. Other times I get, ooh, that sounds scary. So I like to show some videos. This is just a quick one. These are subadult, so kind of close to teenage lemon sharks. And you see they're kind of swimming around towards the camera. I'll talk a little bit more about the camera in just a minute. It's just kind of show you that there are a lot of sharks there. I'm sitting there, not biting, not attacking. Same thing with bigger sharks. Right, this is a great hammerhead coming in real close, smiling for the camera. So I'm going to talk about sort of two different ways that we're working to understand these animals. Both can help us understand different behaviors, habitat use, answer questions that we have, but two different methods. On the right, I have a tiger shark that I'm filming. So I've got an underwater video system. So I'll talk about that. And then on the left is a tiger shark that has a tag on it. So not in the water, different types of equipment, but the goal is the same, to understand more about these animals. Now, you guys may have heard a little bit about shark tagging, shark research. Maybe you've seen it on television shows. Maybe you've heard people talk about tracking sharks, following them. So there's all different actual methods, equipment, and it really comes down to the questions that we're asking. Okay, what do we want to know? The equipment that we're able to use, the type of shark, the species of shark, budget. That's a real thing because this equipment costs money. Different tags cost money. So all of those kind of pieces come together to help us determine what our research might look like and what we have access to. So there are different ways that we can catch sharks. One of the ways is drum lines. Sometimes there's gill nets that are used, long lines. Everything is designed specifically to target usually at least a size range or even sometimes a particular species. And whatever method we have for capturing the shark, it's designed specifically to make it as easy on the animal as possible so that they can still move. The lines are checked frequently so they're not left on a line. And once we have a shark, we do bring it next to the boat. There's a black tip on the right, or into the boat, like you can see that lemon shark on the left. The lemon shark is smaller, so easier to put it in a tub of water to do our scientific workup. This is the data that we collect, and scientists all over the world use different, it might be studying different species, but there's a lot of the same data that's collected in a standard scientific workup. First thing we do is we'll actually measure the shark. So this is a bull shark. It's secured next to the boat. It does have a line in its mouth, and then we get a rope around the tail to keep the animal there. And if it's an animal, if it's a type of shark that has to swim to breathe, many of them do, usually there's a pump system, or we'll just keep the boat kind of moving forward so that the water is always going in their mouth. They're always able to breathe. And then we're going to work very efficiently. Everyone knows their job, and everyone does this as quickly and safely as possible, safe for the shark, safe for us, to collect our data and then let the animal go. So one of the first things we do are some length measurements. On most species, we take a total length, which is tip of the nose to the tip of the tail. Then we take a fork length, which is the tip of the nose to where the tail fin splits. Nurse sharks don't have a bottom lobe to their caudal fin, so we don't actually take that measurement. And then we take a pre-caudal length, which is the tip of the nose to where the tail starts. That tail fin is also called a caudal fin, so pre-caudal. We can also take measurements around the shark, sort of the girth, which can be done in different places down. Sort of think if the shark had armpits, kind of right under there. We don't tip it upright. And you can think of this workup as similar when you go to the doctor and get a physical or a checkup. If it's a small enough shark, we may weigh it as well. This is probably a 200+ pound bull shark. We're not going to bring that shark in the boat and try and weigh it, but the length and girth measurements can help us estimate the size. So you could weigh them as well. And then we're going to start to collect some other data. This is just a quick little video. Oh, maybe this one's not going to play. Whoop. There we go. Okay, so you can just kind of see us leaning over, pulling the measuring tape, working together as a team. Okay. I'll talk a little bit about the tags, just seeing some of the different equipment and the animals next to the boat. So one of the other things that we do is we can take a little bit of tissue sample. This is similar to if we clipped your fingernails or cut your hair to get your DNA, right? Your internal name tag. We do this with sharks as well. And there's some really interesting information that can come from this. Tiny little piece of skin. We can also take some further down the muscle tissue. And what it does is it can give us the shark's DNA. So we can actually figure out a family tree. Really cool. Shark families do not stay together. Mom and dad sharks do not take care of their babies. There's no parental care. And so if you see sharks together, you're not assuming that they're a family, right? So this can kind of tell us if we've ever caught mom, dad, brothers, sisters, how often they're in the area, kind of figure out who's been in the area and if we have a family tree. The other thing we can look at is stable isotopes. And what this is really allowing us to understand what the shark's been eating. Okay, so you can look at taking that little sample, pretty amazing. Imagine if I took your fingernails and analyzed it and I knew that you guys had been eating pizza all last month. You had a bunch of spaghetti, chicken nuggets, all right, whatever. So yeah, it helps us understand over a length of time. We can take a little bit of a blood sample as well to get a better idea. Grass beds, coral reefs, the mangroves, and sort of understand what what place in the food chain they are, or the food web, because sharks are not always at the top of the food chain. But no matter where they are, they're eating other animals, and this is an important job. So it helps us understand that. Then there are different types of tags we can use. So some of you at home may have a pet, a cat or dog that's microchipped. If you don't know, ask your parents when you get home, or your family, grandma, aunts, uncles, whoever. And it's a tiny little chip, kind of like grain of rice size, that's injected just between the shoulder blades of your cat or dog. And it's a name tag, really. It's an internal name tag. It will be linked to your family's address, phone number, and we can do the same thing with sharks. But we're not trying to find a lost shark in case they've gone missing like your pet. We're just trying to give them an internal name tag. So we inject this tiny little grain of rice, this chip, just under the dorsal fin, that top fin of the shark, with a syringe, you can see there. And we have a reader. We wave it over. We'll wave it over the shark first to make sure we haven't already tagged this animal. And if we have, then we can look in our data books, or we can talk to other scientists using the same type of tag and say, hey, this isn't one of our sharks, but maybe it might be one of yours, and we found it here, and we can share data, which is always helpful. We put it in, we scan it. You can see that number that comes up. Think of it like a barcode. When you go to the store, those black and white lines on an item and the register scans it and it comes up with a price. It's kind of like a barcode for sharks, right? And these can last up to 20 years in an animal. So it's really helpful for us. It's a pretty inexpensive way of actually giving this animal an ID. We also use roto tags. You may have seen a cow, a pig, some sort of farm animal with one of these in its ears. That's exactly the same thing these are. They come from cattle companies. We use a hole punch it in the dorsal fin of the shark. That's cartilage. If you guys don't know that sharks do not have any of their bones in their body, their entire skeleton is made of cartilage, the same stuff like top of your ear, end of your nose. It's really flexible. And with no nerve endings in this part of the fin, it's a really great place to work with, hopefully reducing our impact on this animal. And we pop it in there. It's got a number. You can see the numbers. Think of that like your name tag. On the back side, it will have an email, a phone number, a website. So if somebody sees that shark underwater and can get a photo, which I'll talk about in a little bit, of that information, they can record it. Or we hope that if somebody catches the shark, they'll see that, maybe record some information if they're a scientist, but if not, let the animal go. And the color codes, you can see the yellow over white. We were using those for a visual study. So we needed to be able to see the animals from a tower. So we had different color combinations so that we could identify the animals. We didn't have to get up close. We just knew that, yellow over white was a specific shark. We could record how much time they were spending in the area because it was really shallow water and those fins were sticking up. These are spaghetti tags and Casey tags. So there are two types of dart tags. That little metal bit's the dart that just goes just under the dorsal fin. You can see that bull shark down in the lower image. It's kind of trailing back. And these are just very simple ways for us to identify individuals. And inside that little tube that you can see the numbers, if you uncap that, there's a little piece of paper that has all the information of who you can contact. Again, a very inexpensive, simple way to identify these animals. And then hopefully if somebody catches it, sees it, they can record it, or they know it's part of a study and they're going to let it go. And the tagger, the thing that you see in everybody's hands, is just the device that we use to just kind of pop that in just under the skin. Okay. Now, think of your cell phone, right? It does some pretty amazing stuff. You can record videos, edit them, chat with friends, shop online. You can do all sorts of stuff. Technology is pretty incredible. We're using that technology to study animals in a lot of different really interesting ways. And it's helping us with the different types of tags that we can use to study animals, including sharks. These are acoustic tags. It means they make a noise. Think of it like they each have their own unique ringtone, right? But it's a series of beeps that we'll listen for. And there's different sizes depending on the size of the animal that you're working with. So this gray hammerhead has it placed on the outside just below the dorsal fin. And that thing sticking up out of the sand is called a receiver. It's an underwater listening station. And it listens only for those tags. Within a set distance, if an animal swims in that kind of circular area, that computer inside that waterproof case will record the date, the time of day, the water temperature, and the animal tag. So it can tell us which animals are hanging out in the area. Are they coming at the same time every day? Are they hanging out with the same animal? And certain species like lemon sharks, they do have best buddies when they're young. So are they hanging out with the same shark? Also, maybe it's an animal that just passed through once and we won't see it again. So it can tell us a little bit about habitat use. This is a sand bottom area. So what animals are coming into that? And how much time they're spending there. So it just gives us a little bit of an understanding, kind of a way to spy on sharks without being right there. We can learn a lot. These tags can also be placed inside the shark. So if you flip a shark upside down, they go in a sleep-like state called tonic immobility. It's anesthesia, really. So if you've ever had surgery or you know someone who has, so you're not awake to feel what's happening. So we make a small incision sort of in the stomach cavity of the shark where there's nothing vital right near the skin. It's a very shallow incision. We insert that tag, a couple of stitches. This is all the same exact equipment that is used on humans. So it's human grade. Couple of stitches, flip it over, shark swims off, no idea. It cannot hear that tag. Only that device, the listening station. We can't hear it. The shark doesn't swim around and all of a sudden have this beeping noise. And they heal incredibly quickly. I tagged a shark with one of these, a small tiger shark, and we caught her, I think, 4 or 5 days later, and she was already, that incision was closed up. You know, you tell it was there, but they heal incredibly quickly, which is really remarkable. Think about if you have a cut on your hand and you went in the water every day, it's not going to heal. Another type of tag we can put on, that's a skate at the top, and this is another great hammerhead, is a pop-off satellite tag. So it connects to satellites spinning up above our planet, and it can transmit information. So it stays on the shark for a set amount of time. There's usually a magnesium strip that will corrode underwater for a certain amount of time, and then the tag's going to pop off and pop to the surface, and that antenna, as it's floating around, will transmit data. This can help us with depth, it can help us with location, and so gives us another way of sort of spying on these sharks without having to be right with them. This is just a little bit, let's see, kind of explaining this is what it looks like a little bit closer. There's 2 different attachment methods. And the last tag I'll talk about is called a spot tag. So this is really kind of an iPhone for sharks, but they're not calling their friends or making videos, but it has a GPS in it, just like a phone, if you're using it to get directions. So the batteries, you see the silver bit, and then the green bit's the computer, and we can program it to record at set intervals. And there's a sensor on the top of this tag. You can see it on the smaller one by the tooth. There's like a little gray disc, and when that touches air, it transmits a GPS location through that antenna. Now, there's a lot of things that have to come together to make this work. It's also the position of the satellites, how good of a reading we get, and you want to work with species that spend time at the surface. So tiger sharks, makos, white sharks, that's the species that you may have seen. There's a couple of apps you can follow and use to follow and track these sharks in live time. And so when they come up, we get a position. So this is just attaching this to a tiger shark. So again, animals secured next to the boat. We're working together. We'll bolt that right to the fin. Eventually it's going to move through the fin and it will come off. And this is what we get using, this is Google Earth, and then we can actually plot the data, the tracks from, this is tracking a shark, if you've heard that. So each green dot after, the first one is when we put it on the shark, and this is off the island of Saba in the Dutch Caribbean. And every green dot after this was about a 9-foot tiger shark, so still fairly young, not actually considered a mature adult shark. And she covered some distance as she heads towards South America. Now, all those green dots there, she was probably coming up after a turtle or a bird, something at the surface that she was feeding on, right? And what we can do is, this is over a set amount of time. This shark actually had this tag on for almost 4 years. So we got a lot of data. This is just a one part of it. It's going to go turn red because that's the amount of time we wanted to analyze. Now, what we can do is we can look at multiple sharks with these tags. Do they follow a similar route? We know that tiger sharks migrate in pretty similar patterns year after year. So can we protect those regions? Can we find out where they're giving birth? We want to protect those regions as well. Those nursery habitats where the little sharks are. So understanding where they go and where they spend their time is really, really important for putting better conservation efforts in place. Things like shark sanctuaries. I live in the Bahamas. We're in a shark sanctuary. It's illegal to catch and kill sharks here, but a lot of the species we have, the great hammerheads, the tiger sharks, they migrate. They do not stay in these safe protected waters. If they swim 50 miles to the US from here, they're not protected. So it's understanding where they're going and where they're spending their time so that we can get larger scale or seasonal. If we know these tiger sharks are giving birth in May in a certain area, then we want to close that off and protect it to give them the best chance to survive, especially with something like a great hammerhead, because they're a critically endangered species. Okay. So now just to switch over to using cameras. You guys have probably seen GoPros. People use them for skiing, for I don't know, surfing, jumping out of planes, all sort of stuff. They're these great compact little cameras. I have one right here. Pops in the case. These are actually an amazing tool. So we have lots of different I was trying to see if I had my case right here, but I don't. There's lots of different camera systems that you can have, and they go in these cases that protect them, made of metal or plastic to keep them nice and safe. Like you can see there, the camera's inside that big case. And it lets us take photos and videos underwater. So if you've watched TV shows with animals in the ocean, Shark Week, BBC, Discovery Channel, and National Geographic, somebody got in the water with a camera system and took those videos and then was able to share it with you. This is just, that was with this is just a subadult lemon shark. These are some great hammerheads. Again, some of my favorites. Sometimes we're on scuba, so sometimes I have that scuba diving equipment. Most of you watching are probably old enough to learn how to dive, and you don't have to be near the ocean. You can do your practice stuff. You start in a pool, and you can do it in a quarry, a lake, or the ocean. And it's that BC that you wear is kind of like a jacket vest, and it's got a regulator. That's what's in my mouth attached to that tank of air. And it's a really incredible and important tool for us to spend time in the ocean and study these animals. Take photos and videos, but also to observe their behaviors, not just sharks, any animal. Because it allows us to stay down in their world and be part of it for a short amount of time and really see what they're able to do. Also able to film the science. So here's that bull shark getting tagged, right? And if you just looked at this image, you might go, oh, that looks horrible. What's happening? But now when we take photos and videos, we can use that to explain this process of inserting an acoustic tag, why it's being done, why that's important, and having photos and videos to share the science with others so that they understand why it's important, why it's happening. Because yeah, if you have this image, okay, what's happening here? Is that shark okay? Yeah, but if I can explain it, now I can tell the story and you understand. Maybe now you think you might want to study bull sharks and study their movements by using acoustic tags or something else. It makes it a lot easier to understand why we're tagging sharks, the importance of it, and how it works. What does it look like? And using photographs is also important for identification. So here in Bimini, there's been the research station here, the Shark Lab has identified over 60 individual hammerheads. They have unique markings. You can look, this is just a few, and you'll notice that they're just, pause for a second. Look, okay, different coloration and different markings. And they've identified, some of them have been tagged and named. And so photographs can help us kind of catalog who's in the area each day. If people can learn which, those unique markings, and they can say, okay, so Scylla down at the bottom right, my favorite animal on the planet. I've been diving with this shark for probably 8 years now, I guess. And each year in the winter months, these hammerheads migrate to our island and we spend time with them. Now, Scylla has not returned this year. So it's always kind of nerve-wracking because they go to other areas that are not protected. So we get to know these animals, we get to know their behaviors, their personalities. Yep, I said personality. Sharks do have personalities. Some are bold, some are shy. And yeah, it's really incredible. So our photographs and our videos can help us understand the different individuals that are in the area. Again, how often we see them, and what time of year they show up. Do they come early in the season? Do they come late? Do they leave early? So really helping us understand a little bit more about behavior for this specific species. BRUVs are another system, another way we use cameras, baited remote underwater video. So you can see that's a frame camera. There's a bit of bait there. We'll put it in the water. There's a buoy at the top, leave it for about an hour. It's usually a lot of GoPros that are used for this now. And they have a longer battery life, and then record, and we can see what animals show up. And it's a good way to understand sort of predator-prey systems, abundance, how many of different animals are in the area without being right there with our cameras, and our bubbles from scuba, which might influence the behavior of the animals. And this is just a video a friend took. That's just a fish on a stick. And this is right here in Bimini. Down to 800 feet. We can't go on scuba there. And you can kind of see what animals come in. For size, that's probably a 2 to 3 foot long fish. All right, and there's a bigger fish that's going to come in and check it out. And eventually that tiger shark is going to come in closer and actually sort of take the whole system for a bit of a trip. It wants the snack. So yeah, tools for understanding areas that we can't actually go unless we had a sub. The last type of camera is we actually do fin cams. So we can place it on the shark and let it record for a set amount of time. Again, it's got a little strip that pops open, sort of looks like kitchen tongs on there, records what the shark's seeing, pops open, floats to the surface, that antenna goes up, and we can actually use a different type of antenna to listen for that signal, that beep, and track it down and hopefully get our camera back. And what you get is pretty cool. It's like being in a video game and you're the shark. So what this does is it gives us, again, a glimpse into their life. Where do they go? Where do they spend their time? Always exciting if we potentially can see them hunting food, interacting with other animals or, other sharks. So it really helps us learn. So why do we do all this? Okay, we want to learn about these animals because, unfortunately, about 100 million sharks are killed every single year, right? And sharks do not have lots of babies. They don't produce eggs like other fish. Some lay egg cases, some give birth to live young, but they don't have a lot of offspring. And they grow very slowly. They mature late, which means they have to be older before they can even reproduce. White sharks, great whites, have to be about 25 to 30 before they can actually give birth. So that shark has to survive that long before it can produce offspring. And so this number is scary because their populations are going down. And many of them, I had to update this because now it's over 30% are now threatened with extinction. The IUCN in Red List classifies the status or the amount, how the health of the population of different animals, and sharks are in trouble. Threats overfishing, they're caught as bycatch, not the target species. Finning, which you've probably heard of. And people eat shark. Their oil from their liver is used to make lipstick, lotion, makeup. It can be mislabeled as other fish, can be found in dog food, cat food. So these animals are in trouble. So ultimately, let me just eject out of this, stop share. We are trying to understand, where do they go? What do they eat? Where do they give birth? What are their migratory patterns? Where are they spending time and why? Because in order to get better protection put in place, shark sanctuaries established, fisheries regulations, we need to understand these animals. We have to have that data. And in order to go to a government to put laws in place, I love sharks, they're amazing, but that's not always enough to actually get a law put in place. You have to have data. You have to show that a region is critically important, like the nursery habitats and the mangroves here. Very, very important area, protected area now. And so, yeah, it's all of this comes together to really help us understand more about these animals. And it's used for other animals. This isn't just for sharks. It's used for all different animals. And the same applies whether they live on land or in the water. Yeah, so it's really, really, really important for conservation. We have to have that data. We have to know about these animals in order to protect them. Right. I don't know if you guys are doing the questions in the Q&A. Okay. So I will jump on and I think answer these questions. All right. So
okay, sorry. Do you want us to read the questions to you, or would you prefer to read them?
Oh, you can read them. Yeah, go for it. That'd be great.
I'm so sorry. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, if you want to read them, that would be great.
Okay, yeah, so we can start reading them. All right, so first one, good morning. Are there any shark tagging opportunities for gen public to participate in?
Absolutely. So not in every region, but the ones I know of, the Guy Harvey Research Institute, which we actually take students out, we fund for students to go out. has opportunities. That's in Florida. That's in South Florida, near Fort Lauderdale. They have opportunities. The Field School, which is another boat in Miami, they also have opportunities for anyone to come out, and they have week-long courses. You can actually be a shark scientist for a week. The Bimini Shark Lab here also has field experiences. You can come out and get some experience. So yeah, there probably are opportunities in different areas. I know South Africa has some programs. So yeah, do a little research, because there are absolutely opportunities for anyone to get involved and see what it's like to be a marine scientist.
And then we have another question. How much do sharks change their behavior when they are tagged or being monitored by people with cameras?
It depends on the species and it depends on the animal. So when you have, like a lot of the great hammerheads here, it's a provisioning site. These animals are fed to get them to come in and spend time with us so we can study, so divers can see. Divers come from all over the world just to see these sharks. And so they've become conditioned. They're smart. Sharks are extremely smart animals, so they learn. And they will come around. They're more sort of comfortable with humans. They understand that we're not trying to hurt them. And so they'll come in and have the food. Now that would be very different than if you just saw a great hammerhead out kind of in a different area that they hadn't maybe encountered a person before. Sometimes they leave the area, sometimes they swim right away with the tag, other times they come right back. So it really depends on the actual type of shark and the individual, how they're going to react and what they're kind of comfortable with.
Okay, and then we have a couple of people wondering what your favorite species of shark is.
My favorite species is the great hammerhead. They're just the most incredible animal on the planet, and getting to spend time with them and hoping that by teaching and photos and videos and sharing this and teaching others that this is a critically endangered species. The next stop is extinction. So the more we can do to understand them and share about these animals and encourage people to see them, to protect sharks, the better their chances of surviving.
And then let's see. Yeah. And then we have another question. Is the great white shark the biggest shark?
It is not. The whale shark is actually the biggest shark. They can be longer than a school bus, about 45 feet long, and they eat plankton. They're filter feeders, so they actually swim along and suck in plankton like a big underwater vacuum cleaner.
All right. Do other sharks eat each other?
Absolutely. So sharks are on the menu. Great hammerheads eat black tips. They also eat southern stingrays and go after eagle rays, which are sort of their cousins. You will see sharks predate, and lots of different tiger sharks, bull sharks, even lemon sharks. So a lot of different species will eat other sharks or even sharks in the same species.
Which type of shark can dive the deepest?
So there are many deep sea species, which is really exciting because there's actually new species of sharks being discovered every single year, and a lot of them are deep sea species because we still know very little about the ocean. So you have things like lantern sharks, you have frilled sharks, you have goblin sharks. So many species that actually spend time, and you're talking hundreds and hundreds of feet deep, even thousands of feet deep in the ocean. So pretty remarkable, and they're adapted to live there, from their body shape to their eyes, adjusting to the lack of light. So really, really fascinating. Some deep sea species can even glow. So that's really cool.
All right. Is there any type of species that is like more difficult to work with than others?
I think if you think about access to animals, so we're really lucky here in the Bahamas because we have sharks everywhere, and you can put a little bit of bait in, get them to come close, you can tag them, you can study them, photograph, dive with them. But it's not always that easy everywhere. So there's a lot of species that, especially deep sea species, that unless you're in a sub going down to see them live, or they're caught in big nets and brought up. So I would say those are some of the more difficult ones to study, just because the depth of the ocean that they're in isn't easy for us as humans to access. And it's why we still know very little about the deep parts of the ocean and the animals that live there.
And then from Sheila Wagner, how long does it take to put a device on a shark?
So depending on the type of tag we're using, that full workup, the whole thing, collecting all of our data and releasing the shark, depending on the type of tag, 5 minutes to about 12 to 15. So it's very, very quick. We try and do it as fast as possible to minimize the stress on the animal, because we can't explain what we're doing. They've been caught, it's stressful. We want to collect our data and get them swimming again as soon as possible.
So what's the oddest occurrence that you've ever experienced when researching sharks?
I don't know, but the oddest, I'm always really fascinated by stuff. So I think it's really interesting, seeing different behaviors. I think the coolest thing I've ever seen, I've actually seen a lemon shark give birth, which I don't think it's odd. It's really interesting. They give birth to live young. The babies come out, they spiral, they have to break off their umbilical cord, which leaves a little kind of belly button scar, and then they start their life. So I think for me, I don't find anything odd. Seeing certain personality traits, seeing sharks roll and kind of chafe, chasing fish. It's all really, really interesting.
How is shark fin fishing impacting sharks?
So the finning is the act of actually cutting the fins off the animal while at sea. And oftentimes the shark is still alive and it's thrown back into the water because the fins take up much less space and are worth more money than the whole shark. This is it's having a significant effect on the populations of many different species. And it's probably one of the biggest components of that 100 million number. So it's absolutely a big part of why some species are actually threatened.
Gio and Melanie are wondering, how long have you been researching and studying sharks?
I have been working with sharks now for almost 20 years. So I've been lucky to travel all over the world and work with a lot of different species. And I'm always learning new things, which is really exciting. So for all you future scientists out there, keep learning, because we're learning about sharks, new stuff every day. I mean, there's new species being discovered, new aspects of their personality, their biology. It's really, really fascinating and it's exciting.
And how many sharks have you seen in the water?
I have seen thousands of sharks. I'm really, really lucky. I see sharks almost every day. So I spend a lot of time with these animals. Sometimes here, I live on a pretty remote island. Sometimes I see more sharks than I do different people. So it's awesome.
Have you ever had any shark experiences that made an impact on your life or career path?
Absolutely. So I saw my first shark when I was 8 years old. I was snorkeling in Florida and I was obsessed. I was so fascinated with this little nurse shark, and I knew I wanted to be a marine biologist, but then that just really, I got books and wanted to learn more. So that definitely impacted my life. Like it set me on a journey that, and the more opportunities. The first time scuba diving with sharks was really amazing. The first time I tagged a shark. So really, really memorable moments. And just seeing how beautiful these animals are and just knowing they deserve our respect. They're wild animals, they're predators. I'm not riding sharks, wrestling them. They deserve our respect anytime we're in the water with them, but they're really misunderstood, and they're not these man-eating monsters they're made out to be. They're certainly a wild animal. Yes, they deserve our respect for that, but they also need our help because they're in a lot of trouble.
And when you flip the shark upside down, do those sharks react to that when you put the device on?
So when you flip a shark upside down, it's pretty much asleep. So it's not moving, it's not doing anything. So that's why it allows us to actually do that surgery. It doesn't move at all. So because if you were trying to perform surgery on a shark that could feel it, you wouldn't be able to do it safely for the animal or for you. It would be thrashing around. So yeah, it's there. It's not moving. So yeah, that definitely makes it easier we're really lucky that we have that. We don't have to bring in all this extra equipment and things to be able to do that. It's a natural process that exists and happens that actually helps us, and is why certain tags were developed and being able to use, because of that natural process that happens.
What sort of setbacks have you faced in your research?
So I think, today is International Day for Women and Girls in Science. So I can talk about, there have been challenges, definitely. I've been overlooked. I've been told I couldn't do something because I was a woman. And I think we're in this amazing age now where more and more women are getting into the field of science. So for, you guys watching, don't let anyone tell you you can't do this, no matter where you're from, male, female, whatever you relate to, or just follow your dream, work hard and find mentors, find people to support and work with, and you can support them. I was really lucky to have incredible mentors that inspired me, supported me, and said, don't listen to the no, because it's you can do this if you want. And I'm thankful for the incredible women I work with every day who continue to inspire me. So absolutely, challenges. It's also, marine science is competitive. There's a lot of people who want jobs and placement at universities, and then there's a lot of people vying for those very few positions. So the career itself can be very, very competitive. Even working with sharks, finding funding, jobs, programming is also very competitive. So but if it's something you're passionate about, find opportunities, volunteer, get involved, intern, learn, and find a way to do it. Don't listen when people say, oh no, you can't do that, especially if they say you can't do it, because that's not a job for women. This is a job for anybody.
And then, is it true that sharks are good for eating fish because there will be too many fish and then not enough oxygen?
So sharks, they play an important role, whether they're at the top of the food chain or wherever. They do eat other animals, which helps keep the food chain balanced. And think of it like they're managers. So they're making sure everybody's doing their job and there's not too many of one fish, not enough of another. And when you remove sharks from an area, all the animals that they eat, their populations go up because there's no predator. They go up and up and up. And then what can happen is they don't have enough food. And then you start to see the system break down. And I've been to areas where the sharks have been completely fished out, and you don't see really healthy corals. You don't see a lot of fish. So it does make an impact. We don't know over time ultimately what would happen, but we definitely do see an impact when you remove sharks. They're an important part of the ecosystem, very, very important part of the ocean's ecosystems.
Miss Johnson's 5th grade class would like to know if there's an app that they can watch or use to watch and track sharks' movement.
Yes, so you have the GHIR, the Guy Harvey Research Institute has an app that you can track, and also OSearch. They tag the sharks, and they both have apps and websites that you can follow different sharks and live track.
All right. In your experience, are hammerhead sharks or great white sharks more rare to see? How long are their lifespans?
So they're not, I think great hammerheads are probably more rare in the way that we see them here. Bimini is what we know of the only place in the world that you can see multiple great hammerheads in really shallow water. They're traditionally a solitary species, and we can have up to 10 or 11 on a dive, individuals that we see. And now if you were just out, there's sites that people now know that you can go specifically to see great whites, specifically to see great hammerheads. There's not a lot of those sites, so maybe not as common as some other species. And lifespans, great whites, it's probably 50 to 75 years, but that was updated as scientists have learned more. That was recently, that they live longer. Great hammerheads, anywhere from probably like 25 to 30. But it could be longer. That's the thing, is we don't actually, we're always learning more. So it actually could be longer. But both are really, really incredible to see.
Then are you working for some sort of organization, or do you sort of freelance?
So I do both. I run an organization called Sharks for Kids. So I run my own business, but then I also do freelance work consulting on science projects. So I'm still involved in a few research projects, and we'll be starting a new research project in May that I'm really excited about. So those of you guys who, if you follow Sharks for Kids on social media, we'll be posting and sharing about that. But I also do a lot of photography for different projects as well. So a bit of both.
And have you ever gotten injured while out in the field with the sharks? And do you tag or research stingrays as well?
I have worked with stingrays when I was working on a project in Australia, and we were looking at a bunch of different animals and their impact on movements of other animals in this one region. So I have worked with stingrays. Injuries I've had have been boat bruises, falling over. I've never been bitten by a shark. I've never had a shark try and bite me. It does happen when you work with animals. If you're handling them, especially, you want to be really careful because, again, that animal doesn't know what you're trying to do. But mostly just, and we get sometimes when we're handling the sharks, they have really rough skin. It feels a little bit like sandpaper. So if you're kind of holding a shark or securing it to the boat, sometimes you get kind of shark burn, we call it. It's their rough skin rubs against the skin. But yeah, anything serious has been like boat related, or just, yeah, sometimes it's really rough seas and you're trying to move around and do stuff, and it's challenging conditions, or it's raining, or it's dark. We do a lot of stuff at night. So those can be some of the more kind of challenges. The animal part of it's sometimes the easiest part.
So how did you get into this field, like your majors, jobs, etc.?
So I actually studied behavioral biology with a focus on marine animals, and then started working right out of school as a research assistant, went right to Australia to work on a project, then went to California to work with white sharks, and just really started gaining as much experience as I could. And then started filming along the way while I was doing that. And then over the time, took the science experience, and I was still working on projects throughout the years, took the science experience, took the cameras, and brought it together and actually created Sharks for Kids in 2012. And we launched our website in 2013. So kind of decided that what I was passionate about and brought it together to create something to educate, because I think it's really important for kids to understand these animals and want to help them and understand why they're important, and just they're fascinating, they're amazing animals.
And then what causes sharks to bite sometimes, but not other times?
So it really depends on the type of species. A lot of times it could be murky conditions, and think about if people are fishing in the area and then somebody's hands are in the water. And you have to remember, these animals, if their food is typically something that's going to run away, swim away, and fight back, they want to grab it first. All right. And then kind of, grab at it, get it, and before it get a chance to get away. So that can happen. But also, I think sometimes if humans go in an area where, there's sharks, there's people are fishing, there's bait in the water, something's going on, it's kind of murky, stirring up. So I think it's our responsibility as well to make choices when we enter the water. The ocean is their home. We're just lucky to visit it for even a few moments. So it really can depend on, whether the animal, when a bite happens and they spit it out, because we're not tasting like food, but they have sharp teeth, and so injuries can happen. But it could be, the shark gets close enough and realizes it doesn't look right, it doesn't smell like food. And whereas other times it could just be in that, kind of hunt mode and goes in. So it really could be the conditions, the species of shark, and the animal. But overall, bites are very, very rare. On average, about 5 humans die from shark bites in the world each year. That's very, very low. It's not, I know we hear a lot on movies and the news and TV, and that no, that's not the reality. Humans are killing 100 million sharks every year. So that's really the big scary number.
What are the main differences between fresh and saltwater sharks?
So freshwater sharks, there are these river sharks. They're very, very rare. In some cases, scientists have only ever had access to one individual. And then you have the bull shark, which we do know a lot about, which is a species of shark that can swim in fresh, brackish, and salt. And the biggest difference is the ability to handle, to tolerate salt. And what bull sharks do is when they go into fresh water, they have to be able to adjust their body, osmoregulate, but quickly. They don't have a long process because they're immediately in that change. So when you have bull sharks going into fresh water, they're going to start peeing about 20 times more often than they do when they're in the ocean. So it's really the ability to tolerate the lack of salt and how that affects the body.
And then, is there a way to tell a shark's age? How do you know?
So one of the ways, which scientists don't do as much anymore, is sharks have in their vertebrae, they have rings just like trees do. But in order to count those and see that, the animal has to be dead. That's not ideal, especially if you're studying an endangered species. But we do know certain measurements, sizes. When I talked about, if you heard me earlier say at 9 feet or just under 3 meters, that tiger shark is not a mature adult. So we know size ranges of when a certain species reaches about this size or above, we know that they're approximately this age. We also know some growth rates for species. Juvenile, like tiger sharks, when they're born, they double their length in the first year. Other species don't do that. They might only grow a little bit. So using that is how we can kind of estimate now the ages of different sharks without, because we don't want to have to kill them to learn about them. That defeats the whole purpose. So yeah, developing new ways to understand their size and growth rates to get a best estimate on their age.
So Jaden would like to know what places around the world you have traveled in order to study sharks.
I've worked in Australia, different parts of the US, throughout the Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, the Dutch Caribbean, Indonesia, New Zealand. So yeah, I've been to some really incredible places to study all different species.
So we have another question. I imagine that you get emotionally attached to the sharks, just thinking about the one you said that you've seen for the past 8 years.
Yeah, I mean, that animal, just because I've had some really cool encounters with her, and we know they leave Bimini and they go to places that they can be fished. They're not protected. So each winter when they come back, it's a relief when you start to spend time with an animal and get to know them. And she's my favorite shark ever. And so when she hasn't shown up this year, we know she spent time in another island. Don't think she's been seen there either. So yeah, you start to wonder, and yeah, you do. You get to know these animals and you care about them. And also they're a critically endangered species. And it's scary, the kind of the gauntlet that they have to run and the threats that they face. And you just want other people to see how beautiful and amazing she is and want them to care. I think when people see something that they don't understand, but they get a chance to see it and experience it, it can change the way they feel, and it makes it easier for them to want to help something.
And then what got you into marine biology and sharks specifically? And then did you have a fear of them as a kid? And what would you recommend for people that do have a fear of sharks?
So I never had a fear, and I was just always loved the ocean, explored tide pools as a kid growing up in Maine, and really just was obsessed with any ocean animal, crabs, snails, anything I could find. And so I knew I wanted to study them. I was like, wow, there's a job that you can study these animals and learn more. That sounds awesome. So yeah, that never changed. That was from the time I was 5. And I grew up on a lake. And so I had a mask and snorkel and would explore in the lake. So yeah, I didn't have a fear. But for those who do fear, I get it. The ocean's a big place. It's vast, it's unknown. And when a lot of what we see about sharks is teeth and blood and monsters and scary, and we're taught to fear these animals. It's coming at us from a lot of different directions. And so it's really hard to overcome that. And I would say if you are afraid to learn more about them, to research it, and just remember that, you know, they are wild animals, but bites are extremely rare. And millions of people go in the ocean every single day. And the negative interactions are very minimal. And so if you have a chance to go see sharks, go to an aquarium if you want to start there and watch them. And then if you get a chance, you're going somewhere and you want to snorkel or learn to dive and get to see them in their natural habitat and watch them. And you'll see that they're not coming in and trying to attack you. And you watch them swim, you look at their eyes, they're really beautiful. And that can help, that can make a difference and really help change the way you see these animals. I think it's very easy to fear something we don't understand and we haven't seen. So I love when people get the chance to get in the water and see them. I think it's extremely powerful for changing that fear.
How much strength is in a shark bite?
It depends. So bite force has been done, I think like bulls, white sharks, but then there are some smaller species pound for pound that have pretty strong bite forces as well. You've got to think about kind of comparing size isn't exactly, but kind of pound for pound comparing it. So, but then you have the nurse shark that is, it's not just their bite, they can actually suck, and it's about the equivalent of 10 vacuum cleaners. So they can suck a conch, which is a big snail, out of its shell and then crush it. So very, very powerful, but you got to think about that's how they catch their food and eat it. It's not just for eating, it's catching and wrestling their food before they can actually eat it. Very, very powerful.
And as a scientist, which do you like to study more about sharks? Structure and functions of the sharks, or cause and effect relationships involving sharks?
I think cause and effect. Behavior has always been my area of kind of focus and what I'm most interested in. And also, I think it's interesting to look at the cause and effect of human impact on these animals. This is something significant in the world we live in: climate change, pollution, overfishing. How is that affecting the food they eat, the habitats they utilize, and then how is that affecting their movements, their behaviors? And we're seeing that it's significant. So I think that's really interesting and really important to understand.
So then could you tell us your process for planning and carrying out investigations?
So usually, typically is we come up with some sort of question. So the tiger shark that I was talking about that we tagged, we wanted to know, where are they going? Like, where are they in this area? And then where are they going? And ultimately, if they're females, where are they going to give birth? So that was kind of the start. So, okay, then we go, what do we need to do that? Okay, we need to go to the area where fishermen have told us that they're seeing these big tiger sharks. Okay, so how do we get there? We have to have a boat. It's pretty far offshore. We have to have a boat that we can live on and stay on. And sleep on and eat on. Okay, so we have to get that. Okay, now what kind of tags do we want to use? Well, we want to track their migration, so we need to use some sort of satellite tag. Okay, so we need to order those tags and get the permits to be able to work in that area. We have to have a team. Is the team all trained up? Then we build the equipment. We actually built all the drum lines that we used. And we had to get creative because we couldn't get one part that we needed. So we filled traffic cones with cement to put the weights on our lines. So yeah, you're always, you never know what you might learn or have to learn how to do, and be creative, because sometimes you don't have access to all the exact supplies that you wanted for that. And so you build your supply list, and then you come up with all of that. Once you know everything you need, you come up with your budget. Okay, how much money do we need to make this happen? And then you go for funding. You apply for grants. Different organizations may be putting in funding. And so that's really typically the process. And when that comes together, you get your funding, you can buy all your equipment, train your team, get everything lined up. And then you go out and you hope you have good weather in the window that you're working with, and you hope you catch the animals and are able to get your tags out.
And then what about your process for obtaining, evaluating, and communicating information?
So it's very different depending on the audience I'm working with. So the information, the data we collect, or say if I read a scientific paper about a study, then I want to translate that into information that's accessible for everybody. So if I'm speaking to adults versus a group of kindergarten students, I want to translate that way in an engaging, fun. So I want to break it down and make it understandable. I don't want to use terms that maybe people don't understand, that only maybe other scientists doing that work don't always even fully understand. So yeah, I think it's important to take that data and that information and break it down into fun, interesting, kind of almost like a slideshow with just bits of information kind of that I shared with you guys today, to make it accessible. And it's really, really important to do that, because we need people to care. We need people to understand why science is important. We need people to understand what's happening with sharks and other animals and why we're doing this work. So being able to translate that in a way that you can engage people and get them involved and excited and interested, especially with sharks when there's so much fear, it's really, really important. So science communication is a very, very big part of what I do. And it's very, very important. And it's important for, scientists working in all different areas.
All right, so unfortunately, that is all the time we have today. But if you guys have more questions, please check out Sharks for Kids. I'm sure that Ms. Morris would love to answer all your questions and educate further. And just thank you so much for another year of coming back to MBTI. We hope to see you again next year.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. It's an amazing program. And thank you everyone for all the wonderful questions. Yeah, check out sharksforkids.com. Send us some information. We're happy to answer questions. Thank you guys so much for hosting.
Yep.